I want to go over some comments that I received on a recent live convo that I had with Brandon from Pan-Africanism Strikes Back. While I do appreciate Brandon for opening up his platform and giving me a chance to speak, I will admit that this wasn't necessarily the best articulation of my views. And judging from some of the comments and DMs that I've been receiving from black conservatives, calling me a Marxist and a commie, many of those who fall on the right-wing conservative side of the spectrum saw my views as confusing. The apparent contradiction came in my video where I stated that capitalism should not be idealized in our implementation of economics. What I meant to say more specifically is that it's a bad idea to combine racial identity politics with capitalism because this creates a slippery slope towards scamming. Later on in that same video, I stated in so many words that even in movements against capitalism that exist within capitalism, there will be vestiges of capitalism along the process of revolution, whether it's socialism, communism, or a third wave movement such as seen in Garveyism or any anti-colonial movement on the continent. And this point is very important because a lot of black conservatives can't seem to see past the false dichotomy in the left-right paradigm. Garvey articulated many of my exact sentiments in his text, Message to the People, in advising black folks to not revolt against Western regimes, especially in the West. Garvey advised black folks to engage in commerce in Western nations and then invest towards striking the blow against imperialism in areas like the African continent where there is more demographic leverage. Now, I should have known that such a nuanced approach could be open for a lot of misinterpretation and probably should have been more careful with my words. I also do realize that it can be extremely difficult to have sensible dialogues in highly partisan spaces composed of individuals who, again, do not think that it is possible to move past the left-right paradigm. I initially wasn't prepared for that type of interrogation and wasn't really anticipating the convo being centered on which party I voted for. As I explained in that live, my vote was a protest vote based in apathy about the Western political process and hope for the African process, to the extent that I barely even remember the name of the candidate that I voted for. This is an example of how utterly meaningless that vote has been on my professional and community work both then and now. While I don't personally classify myself as a socialist and also don't necessarily have a problem with those who do, it would be inaccurate to label me a socialist just because I made a protest vote for Hawkins of the Green Party. I remember supporting some of the positions of the libertarian Ron Paul in 2008 due to his many anti-war sentiments. Would that place me on the far right? Absolutely not. If a lifelong Republican like Colin Powell voted for a Democrat like Joe Biden because he personally believed that Trump was unfit for office, does that make him a liberal progressive? Of course not. If a white nationalist like Richard Spencer votes for a Democrat like Joe Biden for the same reason, does that place him on the so-called woke left? Absolutely not. This extremely faulty logic ignores the fact that people vote for diverse reasons. In my own family, there are some people who vote Republican, some people who vote Democrat, and some who vote for a mix of the major parties. On top of this, there are multi-billionaires who vote for the Green Party because they care about the environment, who absolutely would not consider themselves to be socialist. And there is not a one-to-one correlation between capitalists, socialists, and the Republican and Democratic Party. Both major parties are financed by capitalist billionaires who donate to political action committees, and both contain trends of socialism, whether it's the incremental Fabian socialism of the Republican Dwight D. Eisenhower or the self-proclaimed democratic socialism of Bernie Sanders. These conversations require a ton of specificity and nuance. Overall, I don't think that it's ethical for Pan-Africanists to use votes for a Western political party as the primary metric in determining who is legitimate or not. This turns us into pawns on a chessboard of adversaries who absolutely do not have our best interest at heart. Personally, the suggestion that the parties of Ronald Reagan or Bill Clinton will do anything major for black people is laughable. But like I said before, I do not judge black folks who may vote for either party for their own personal reasons, just as I do not judge those who practice different Abrahamic religions, because the majority of those close to me and in the black community at large do both. I take a similar position on this issue that I take with capitalism. It is what it is. If there is no work to construct a replacement of these mainstream Western political parties and ideologies, we have to accept the general black association with them for what it is. Now, I want to zero in on a comment made by Your Tech Homeboy. It reads, now, this brother is obviously not familiar with my content in the areas where I have explained ad nauseum that I am American-born. But as a Pan-Africanist, I do not limit my aspirations or potential to a Western or American context. In this context, my sense of being and reason for resisting Western hegemony clearly extends beyond the boundaries of American citizenship. Now, this goes back to Garvey's quote on whether he identified as a Jamaican or an African. He responds with, "Why would I trade a continent for an island?" And that I completely agree with. I find it interesting that no one ever questions Jewish Americans about whether or not their Jewishness is more important than their U.S. citizenship. I never see these same Negroes asking Chinese and Hindu Americans if they would trade their home cultures or the growing presence of China and India on the global stage for Americanity. These groups use their access to America as a tool to advance their community in relation to other groups. There is absolutely nothing that says that black people can't do the same. It is usually those who traffic in self-hatred and those who desire assimilation who try to weaponize American identity against those who are trying to build and maintain African-centered autonomy. In reality, to borrow from the scholar Greg Carr, there is no such thing as a unified American identity. There are just different nations in the economy competing for wealth and resources. So anyone who would even think about placing American identity before the aims and objectives of black empowerment definitely has a poverty philosophy and sits in the same category as the fecal brain assimilationist and the abysmal Dalmatians of Slovenia. These aren't people who want to take their daily bread. These are essentially those who beg others to bake it for them and feed it to them. This mindset is why the black community is in the position that it is in, and perspectives like mine definitely will help clean up the mess.